This is going to be a walkthrough of a GIS practical. This is how to use the Print Composer in QGIS based on the data that you can find on my GitHub page, Training GIS Print Composer. And we're going to try and produce a simple map looking like this, and then go on to add all the bells and whistles to produce something that we might want to use in a publication or a report. Just so you know all the features available in QGIS to be able to put a map figure. So there is a zip file here which has a QGIS project and the required layers in it that we're going to use in QGIS. So here I have loaded that Print Composer example, and this is a map. It's a map of Peninsular Malaysia with some species distribution stuck on it and some protected areas stuck on it. Okay, so this is the kind of main map interface for QGIS, but to create a map figure we want to use the Print Composer. We access it by clicking this layer manager icon, and essentially you can have multiple different views or map pages to export as nice graphics. And so here's one I made earlier. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, sorry, I've already got it open. Here it is. And it is a main map. It is a little map with an overview, so kind of set this map in a wider geographic context. It's a map with legends, it's a logo, there's some additional details, and a scale bar, this sort of thing. Basically all the bells and whistles we can put on a map figure. Okay, that's the kind of end point that we're trying to get to, but we want to create a new map start from scratch. So we're going to start by pressing the Create button on the Layout Manager. What are we going to call this? I don't know, Test. And here, this is the Print Composer page. And it is essentially a blank page that we're going to stick a map onto. Now, just a bit of admin. We don't really care about these windows up here, so we're just going to squeeze them up a bit. We can change the page layout in the layout menu. We can resize the picture, but for the moment we're just going to leave it as an A4 landscape page. Okay. The item property is the important window here, where we can access and change the details of any window that we add. So let's start by adding a map. We need to kind of switch between all of these little icons on the left hand side of the page. Add map is the starting point, and unsurprisingly we draw a square on the page, and that adds a map. You can see that just adds the current layers loaded in QGIS. It generally doesn't put it at the zoom that you need. So the first thing we want to do is we want to change the zoom within this. So to do that, to affect the content of this window, we need to change tools. And we are moving the item content, and so we want this 4-arrow kind of tab. Once we click that, we can move across and we can move the item's content. We can use our mouse wheel to zoom. Yeah. We can manually change the scale by typing in a different number. So let's say change that to a 5, and we can see that we've zoomed out a bit. Actually, what we want is about a scale of 5 million. Hopefully that's the right number of zeros. Yes. Okay, that looks about right. Okay, and we can choose to show this map in a different coordinate reference system, or spin the map around a little bit if we want it rotated a bit. I think this is fine. So here's our main map. Okay, now the map figure that we wanted to produce had grid lines over this. So let's try and do that. We can go to item properties and scroll down, and there is a section called grids. We want to add a grid. Okay, and now we need to specify what kind of grid we want here. So we modify the grid. Okay, and now we are going to create a map unit interval, but we want to create latitude and longitude lines. So we need to specify that we want latitude and longitude lines which are in the WGS 84 coordinate reference system. Okay, and now we can let's use a 1 degree separation. Okay, 1 degree of longitude, 1 degree of latitude, and then that gives us our grid. Okay, these dark lines are, I find them a little bit intrusive. So what we want to do is change them. Okay, we can change the opacity of those lines, make them kind of transparent, and you can see them change as I change that. We want it to kind of show up, but not really detract from the main map content. So a black line with 10-20% transparency is reasonable, I think. Great. Okay, now we can choose to put a frame around our map. That could be just a simple line border. It could be tick lines at the grid lines. It could be the bells and whistles option of putting kind of black and white lines around the edge. Let's leave that one in. Okay. Now we can collapse these boxes just so we can see. Now we wanted to draw the coordinates on this map. We can check the draw coordinates box, and we can choose what kind of format and where these numbers are shown. So decimal with suffix, degrees, minutes, seconds. I like decimal with suffix. Okay. At the moment it's showing 3 decimal places of coordinate precision. Because we are using 1 degree spacing, we don't need that. Okay, so we've got our decimal with suffix. Do we want our numbers to show up inside or outside the frame? We can change that here, inside or outside. Let's leave it outside as the default. Okay, so we have created our map. We've overlaid it with grid lines. We've put a frame around the outside. We have added coordinates around the outside, so we can now see and pick out any position on our map. Great. This is probably a good time to save and repeat if you want to put in some practice. Next up, let's add a legend. This icon here, the add legend icon, is what we need. Click that, and again draw a square where we want the legend to go. and by default it's just going to add every single layer in QGIS, which is a little bit messy. We'll need to tidy that up a bit. We tidy that up through the item properties window. We can change the title of we can change the title and change the names of any of these things here. We need to untick the auto update, and we can, let's call this legend, and that creates a title in the legend. Okay, now we've got our species, Acanthosaura, it's a lizard, and we seem to have a useless blank, none of the above default in here, and we can just use the plus and minus to add or remove, so let's remove that one. Great, we don't need to display this satellite background image, so let's get rid of that. We don't need to have the countries layer here, let's get rid of that too. Okay, so now we have our legend, main map. I don't like this main map title. Let's just get rid of it. There we go. Now, this legend title is not very intuitive. We can edit it by accessing the item properties, and this is PA is protected areas. Great, and then this is forest cover. So let's edit that label, call it forest cover. And this is state boundaries. Oh, that's a reasonable title. Okay, that is our legend. We can choose to put a box around that legend by clicking the frame button. There we go. Next, we can add a scale bar. So the scale bar items on the left here, we can add a scale bar. Draw a box where we want that scale bar to go, and then we can choose different styles of scale bar and the different distances by accessing the item properties, and the default here is 75 kilometers. Let's make that 100. A nice round number, and we can choose to have more segments, and we can choose the style of our legend. Simple ticked line seems reasonable. Okay, next up we can add a secondary map, a kind of overview map, by going to our original map. We want to add a new map, add map. We're going to make a little overview map. I'm going to stick it in the top right hand corner here. Now the default here is to again load the layers that are currently loaded in QGIS. But if this is going to be an overview, we need to zoom out a bit. So to zoom out, we need to go to the Move Item Content tool, click, and zoom out a bit. How much you want to zoom out is kind of your choice. If you zoom out too far, it goes a bit funny. I'm zooming back in. Maybe I'm going to move the legend down a bit and maybe make this a bit bigger. Okay, I think I probably need to zoom this out a little bit more. The zoom is not super sensitive, and so often you have to end up just going to the scale window and changing the numbers until you get a reasonable looking map. It doesn't look too bad. Maybe I can zoom out a little bit more. There we go. We can see Australia, we can see India, China. That kind of sets the context. Right, but you can see what we've got is a bit of a mess in the middle here. What we really need is just a simple box that says, where is the other map relative to this map? To do that, we need to remove some layers from what's visible here. However, anything we change within QGIS is going to be reflected in both of these maps, unless we tell it not to. So let's go back to the other map window, select our original map window, and we need to go to Item Properties, and then we need to click this button, Lock Layers. As it kind of suggests, when you tick this box, the layers are stuck. So if we then go back to QGIS and turn some layers off, this map, this picture, does not change. What we need to do is we need to turn off the stars and the kind of background. So let us flip over to QGIS. Here we go. And now all we need is the country layer, so we can turn off the main map layer. That will turn off all of the internal layers. Now we flip back to our Print Composer, and now we press the refresh button, and you can see that all of these other layers in the middle have been switched off. So now we can just see the countries, which is what we want. Right, so now we want to show on this map a square that relates to where the other map is. So we go to Layer Properties, we go to Overview. We are going to add an overview. Right, which other map do we want to show as an overview? We want map 1. Okay, great. And now we've got a little red box in the middle that shows where the other map is relative to this wider context, so we can see where we are in the world. Okay. That's the overview map. Maybe we want to add a frame to that. Maybe we want to change the background colour to a nice blue, so that we've got land and sea being shown. Again, these sorts of things are very much personal preference. Actually, I think that blue is a bit too dark, so let's make it a little bit lighter. Yeah, something like that. Next, we can add a picture, some sort of logo or some picture onto our page. In this case, I just want to add a logo, so something like a report. People like to have their company logos in here, so we use the add picture, draw the box where we want the picture to be, and now we can navigate to our picture. Right, we're going to use a raster image. We are going to click on the 3 tabs, and then we just need to navigate to the folder where we happen to have our logo, which is handily included in the zip file. Okay, so very important to acknowledge our institution. So let's put ZSL in there. Okay, and finally, we've got 2 more things to finish off. Let's do a north arrow. Which way is up? Again, the north arrow icon here. We can describe a little box where we want the arrow to go, and we can use the item properties to choose which north arrow we want to use. There's a whole bunch in here. We just can scroll down to one that we kind of like. I feel like it looks like a Star Trek. This one's alright. Yeah, personal preference. Okay, now we've added a north arrow. The cool thing about the north arrow is if you start to rotate the map, the north arrow will rotate with it. And then lastly, maybe we want to add a bit of text, and in this context we might want to add some text that talks about the coordinate reference system of our map. So we can add we want to add an expression based on the coordinate reference system of the map. So if we go into the search box here and type CRS, project CRS description, so double click that and we will get an automated message here that tells us the map projection. Click OK, and then we can see we've got some automated text. If we want to add some context there, map projection, and then we get that additional detail. It's good practice to mention when you're displaying a map the coordinate reference system that the map is displayed on. And there we have it. That is all the bells and whistles. Again, you can tweak colours and lines to personal taste, but we've started from scratch and we've created this page. If we want to export this page, we can use one of these export options up here. So export as an image, so create a new picture. We can export as an SVG graphic. We can export as a PDF. Okay, so let's do that. And here's a PDF we're going to create. Let's call it test and save. And we can then choose all of these items. Let's just leave it as the default. And that's going to create a new file on our file system that is a PDF picture of what we have got on the screen. That's the end of the practical.